If John McCain starts spitting out these gaffes any more quickly, they'll have to make him the host of TV's greatest bloopers. Our third story on the countdown. Until this week, there was not any dispute, practically or semantically, as to what the surge in Iraq was, nor when it began, nor who started it, nor was there any dispute over what was the first major conflict after 9/11, our attack on the Taliban in Afghanistan. Now, Senator McCain has insisted everybody else's understanding of the facts of both of these events is wrong, and he alone is right. Tuesday night, he told CBS that, quote, Colonel McFarland was contacted by one of the major Sunni sheikhs. Because of the surge, we were able to go out and protect that sheikh and others, and it began the Anbar awakening. I mean, that's just a matter of history. Of course, that sheikh was murdered a year later. By yesterday morning, his flacks were claiming he was correct in this, that the surge was the reason the Anbar awakening was successful. Then yesterday afternoon, in front of the cheese aisle in a Pennsylvania supermarket, the senator started claiming that the surge is actually the same thing as the entire counterinsurgency operation in Anbar province, which had begun in August 2006. And now today, in an exclusive interview with Kelly O'Donnell, the senator further honed his redefinition of what the surge actually is and reassigned the credit for it.
I was in Anbar province and met with Colonel McFarland. Colonel McFarland was implementing the surge strategy at that time before troops ever got there. And he had discussions and told the sheikhs who asked for his protection, and he provided it, and that began the Anbar awakening. Then troops came, and those troops were able to protect these sheikhs because Al-Qaeda wanted to kill them off. The surge is a strategy. It's political, it's military, it's troops, it's hold, it's really clear and hold, as opposed to the strategy we were employing before. Colonel McFarland, on his own, basically was going into Ramadi and clearing neighborhoods and holding those neighborhoods before almost anybody else was doing that. He deserves great credit.
And now that Senator McCain has spent 3 days trying to dig himself out of that, perhaps he could turn his attention to explaining this. Also from that CBS interview and brought to our attention by Cenk Uygur of Young Turks.
The fact is we had 4 years of failed policy. We were losing. We were losing the war in Iraq. The consequences of failure and defeat of the United States of America in the first major conflict since 9/11 would have had devastating impacts throughout the region and the world.
The first major conflict since 9/11 was Iraq. What was Afghanistan? What is Afghanistan? Chopped liver? Joined now by our own Eugene Robinson, columnist and associate editor of The Washington Post. Thanks for your time tonight, Gene.
Good to be here, Keith.
Not that he thinks he needs our help or would listen to it, but if you were advising John McCain, what would you say to him now about discussing things like the Anbar timeline or the supposed Iran-Al-Qaeda connection that exists in his mind, or whether or not Afghanistan was a major conflict? What would you say to him about these topics?
Gee, Keith, I don't know how I could improve on that peroration he just gave about how the surge is not just adding troops. It's a state of mind. It's an attitude. It's a holistic kind of entity, I guess. I really didn't understand what he was trying to say. I guess if I were an advisor, I would say I think there's probably limited political gain. While I understand why he would go down this path, there's probably limited political gain in this, and that maybe it would be better to kind of stick to what do we do now. But I certainly wouldn't try to get into the innards of that statement that he gave to Kelly, which was impenetrable to me.
Impenetrable. Is there a way to tell whether he believes this stuff or he's just doing what so many politicians do when they trap themselves in a corner and just put your head down and run straight into the wall and hope it gives way?
Well, I guess on balance, I think he does believe what he's saying. I think the more interesting thing in that context really is the context. I think he really sees Iraq through this kind of prism or context of Vietnam, and we have to win in Iraq. We cannot stand failure. I think most Americans, and I think 100% of the officers in our armed forces certainly understand that the end result in Iraq is going to be ambiguous, whatever course of action we take. It's not going to be, you know, we won, we lost. It's something quite so clear-cut. I'm not sure John McCain sees it that way.
Yeah, Iraq, as some old guys' second chance at Vietnam in their lifetimes, has long been a philosophical and psychological subject for another time for a fuller discussion. But just say we were to throw out our long-held definition of what the surge term meant, and we adopt Senator McCain's position, military, troop, political strategy. How, by that definition, has it been a success?
Well, if you were to accept that definition, you'd say maybe it's gone 1 for 3, I guess. I mean, you could say, one thing you could say fairly unambiguously is that the additional U.S. troops, I guess I'm getting back to our old definition, but that the additional U.S. troops have really contributed to security in Baghdad. When you get to the Anbar awakening, you know, it's complicated. When you get to the political situation in Iraq, I think it's fairly unambiguous that the surge has not had the desired effect. I guess I would say maybe 1 for 3. If are we still counting to in a kind of base 10 system? Again, that McCain statement really kind of threw me, Keith.
All right, I want to close with the same question I asked yesterday, and this is not snark. I'll ask this again. Are there veteran political figures, are there even Republicans who are wondering if, at the current rate of blunders, if John McCain is going to actually make it to the election?
No, no one wonders if he's actually going to make it to the election. There are major Republicans who smack their foreheads from time to time. There are others who who have quite a lot of fondness for John McCain and wish he were doing better in terms of for example, taking advantage of being able to talk about, say, the economy while Obama's abroad. But again, he stood in the cheese aisle and talked about the surge. So there are people who, more kind of in sorrow than in anger, kind of wish he were his campaign were doing better.
Having a wonderful time, Senator. Wish you were here. Eugene Robinson of the Washington Post. Always a pleasure, sir. Thank you.
Good to talk to you, Keith.